Kavita ma'am.
Hello. Hello.
Hello ma'am.
Good morning.
Good morning. Let us start.
Yes.
Good morning all. Good morning all. I welcome you all for the final day of AICETE Atal sponsored FDP on artificial intelligence. I extend my warm welcome to today's resource person, Dr. V. Kavita. Welcome ma'am.
Thank you.
I feel honored to introduce today's resource person, Dr. V. Kavita. She has completed her BE Computer Science and Engineering in University of Madras and has completed her ME and PhD in Anna University. Her area of research include data mining and digital image processing. She has published more than 10 papers in various international journals. She worked as a software engineer for 2 years and has more than 15 years of experience in teaching. Currently, she is working as an associate professor in SRM University, Chennai. Now, I want to hand over my session to Dr. V. Kavita. Ma'am,
Yes. Can you stop presenting?
yeah.
Good morning, all. Welcome to the today's session on introduction to deep learning. So, before going into the introduction to deep learning, actually, deep learning is a part of machine learning, and machine learning is a part of artificial intelligence. So, artificial intelligence is the one which the man wants the computer to think of its own. So, that is the artificial intelligence. And then within the artificial intelligence, one part of the artificial intelligence is the machine learning. So machine learning, without explicitly programming anything, learning from the data, the machine has to think of its own. So that is the machine learning basics. So this is one form of machine learning in which there would be a huge collection of data. So machine learning algorithm works on training. So first, the machine learning algorithm is trained on huge set of data, and after the machine is trained, then it would supply with some test data in order to predict how this machine works. Okay, so depending upon this prediction, you can say how efficiently that machine works, and this after training, this machine learning algorithm can be used for prediction also. So this is how this machine learning works. So in types of machine learning, we have three types. I think you might have come across earlier in this session: supervised learning, unsupervised learning, and reinforced learning. In supervised learning, there would be some labeled training data sets. So what it will do means we will supply a huge amount of data for training. From the training itself, your machine learning will have some mapping between the input and the output. So it is going to learn some mapping from the input and the output. So depending upon that training, it is going to identify when it works. So this is the supervised learning. In unsupervised learning, there won't be any training data set or testing data set or real time. So from a huge collection of data, it is going to discover some knowledge from that data. So you will have a large number of data. It is going to discover the patterns. From the patterns, it is going to give some knowledge or information from the data. There is no testing, there is no training. So it is going to process the entire data, and some useful information will come from the unsupervised. So a very good example for supervised learning is this classification. So in the classification, you will be training your machine learning algorithm with with a data set. After the training, when you supply one input data, it will classify according how it has been trained. Unsupervised learning example is clusterings. So clusterings, there is no training. Depending upon the place or patterns, it is going to cluster different type of data into one clusters. And the third one is your reinforcement learning. In reinforcement learning, there would be a path back, or there would be a thing called as a feedback or a loop inside that. So what it will do, it will try to learn it, and if it is if it achieves the desired thing, it will go, or else it is going to feedback it, and it is going to loop it again until it comes across the desired output. So what is the difference between this machine learning and deep learning is that in machine learning, we need some features. So this feature extraction is explicitly designed by the programmer or the writer who writes the machine learning algorithm. So depending upon the feature selection, your output is going to be there. So the prediction depends upon the feature selection. This feature selection is not done by the machine itself. Instead of that, it is programmed or it is done by the person who writes the algorithm. So that is the machine learning. So in deep learning, what it does means, in deep learning there is no feature extraction. So this feature extraction part, this feature extraction part is missing in the machine deep learning. So for example, in the machine learning, you will have some input and you will say that some features. For example, if you want to classify whether this is a car or not a car, you will have some features. For example, the number of tires, height of the car, or the shape of the car, or something like that. So depending upon the feature, your machine learning is going to classify whether it is a car or a not car. So this feature extraction or this feature classification is done by manually or programmally. It is not done by the machine. So that is what this machine learning is. In case of deep learning, there is no human intervention for feature extractions. So it is directly fed to the deep learning algorithm depending on the input. So it is going to extract the feature on its own. So why we have to go for this deep learning means, for example, if you are using a machine learning, whatever the huge amount of data, there is some limitation on the data. For example, there is some saturation point. So after a saturation point, your machine learning algorithm will not improvise its results even if you supply more number of data. So till it reaches the saturation point only, it is going to improve its output. Suppose if you are supplying a huge data, your result will not improve with the increase in the size of the data. And with the deep learning, it continuously improve upon the amount of data that is applied to that. So what is the disadvantage is that the learning time is more, because this deep learning will learn in a iteration method. So there would be a loop or a feedback. So it is going to run for the training will take a huge amount of time. So that is the problem with this deep learning. But the deep learning can extract the feature of its own, because if it is done by manually or if it is done by any of the coding methods, then we might have missed some features which we think that it is not important. But in that case, it may influence the output. There may be some features which may not be known to the persons, which is important, but there will be some hidden features which would influence the output. So that kind of features can be learned by the deep learning methods. So what this deep learning is, so the deep learning, the machine algorithm is the one which uses this algorithms and data. Depending upon the feature extraction, it is going to give the data. So in deep learning is mainly based on this neural networks. So it is going to mimic the human brain, or the deep learning algorithm is trying to copy the pattern how the human brain works. So depending upon that pattern of the human brain works, this deep learning algorithm has been, or the neural networks has been designed. So this is the normal human neurons. So the human neurons is going to get many inputs from outside. So depending upon that inputs, it will have some body function. That body function will work out and it will give a result, and there would be one activation function. So this activation function will decide whether this input has to be taken or not. So depending upon the activation functions, that output will be fed to the multiple input to the next level. So this is how your human brain works. So it contains many inputs. There is area where it calculates, and then there is an activation function. So the same thing is copied in the deep learning algorithm also. So you have multiple inputs and there is a summation function, then it is fed to the activation function. Depending upon the activation function, the result is supplied. So this is a single artificial neuron. So this is the first algorithm which has been evolved. So when it has been introduced, it has been introduced as a single layered functions. So it has n number of inputs and there are n number of weights. So this can be anything. This can be random weights. So depending upon this random weights, the importance of this node is taken into account. After that, then it is fed to an activation function. Then the result of the activation function is fed to the next layers or the output layer. So you will have some nodes or inputs. So you will have n nodes and there will be some bias nodes. After that, you will have some weights associated with that, and then summation happens. In the summation, all the node weights, all the node values along with the weights are taken as the input, and the summation occurs, and then that layer is fed to the output or the activation of the neuron. So this activation is also another function. So for this activation function, there are many activation function has been defined. This activation function is just a threshold value. So what this the activation function will do means, it will have some threshold values. If the summation function value is greater than the threshold value, then this output will be fed to that next layer, or the output will be given. Or else if the summation of this activation function is less than this threshold value, if for example, if my activation value is say 1 and if the summation value produces 0.5, then that output will not be considered. So this is how it works. So this is some of the activation functions, which earlier this tanh is the main activation function used. Now they are using this rectified linear units. So why this rectified linear unit? It is easier to train. So now this ReLU function is used in majority of this neural networks. This is an example of this perceptron. This perceptron is actually introduced in 1957. Perceptron is nothing but an artificial neuron. We call it as the perceptron. After the perceptron, what it does means, it gives the input. There is weight, there is a summation function, there is an activation function. After the activation function, it checks whether it produces a desired output. If there is no desired output, what it does means, it calculates the difference in the desired output. So D is nothing but the desired output, and Y is the actual output that came out of that perceptron. So this weight is adjusted to this weights. This W0 to W1 weight is or adjusted according to the desired result. So this process is repeated until it reaches the desired output. So this is a linear separation. This is a function, how this works. For example, this first one is nothing but your AND gate. Suppose if you want to implement this AND gate in neural networks, so for the AND gate, you will have the values true and false. Okay, so actually it gives false for all the values except 1 and 1. So this line is nothing but the activation function. So this line is nothing but your activation function. So what it does means, it checks what is the value. For example, if it is 0, 0 means the answer is 0. And if it is 0, 1 means once again the answer is 0. And if it is 1, 0 also, the answer is 0. So this is nothing but your activation function. So what this activation function could be means, this could be any value greater than 0.5. So all the values which is present above the activation function are taken as 1. All the values which are present below the activation function are taken as false. Okay, so for 0 0 and 1 0 and 0 1, the answer is 0. So this is given here. So this is your activation function, or the or the or the specified value. If it goes beyond the specified value, it is then it is true. So 1 is nothing but mentioned in the red color. Suppose if my input is 1 1, then if it goes to the summation, it will give some 1. So it is greater than 0.5, so it will come here. So if it is 0 plus 1, if I take the average, it is going to give the 0.5. So if it is less than 0.5, it is going to be here. So this is how it works for the AND. Suppose if you take for the OR, what it does, only 0 0 is 0, all the other cases are 1. So what this activation function could be means, this activation function could be anything which is less than 0.5. So if your final value was 0, then it is going to be the false. If your final value is greater than some 0.4 or 0.3, it is going to give the true. So this is 0 0, it is going to have this one. So this is nothing but your activation. For XR, you have this layers. So with a single layer, you cannot able to do the operation for a XR function, because for the XR separations, it is going to have a pattern like this. Suppose if I have an activation function here, then here there would be another false value or a wrongly predicted value. Suppose if I divide anyway, it is not going to give me the correct answer. So what it does means, it has this 2 layers. So 2 activation functions are given, or 2 layers are given. First layer is detected, and then it is fed to the second layer, where it is again detected to give the right answer. So next one is your second layer. So what does the problem with this initial stage means? It has the linear separations. So it is going to separate your output linearly, which means that it is going to have some line. So in all the cases, you cannot separate, or you cannot predict your output linearly. So you need to go with the non-linear activations functions. So in the second generation of the neural network, so what it does means, it has this back propagation in the error signals. How it works means, it takes this input layers. After the input layer, it contains a huge amount of this hidden layers, and this hidden layers are once again backtracked in order to have many layers to produce the output. So this in your backtracking, every time an error is calculated, it depends. It can be a mean square or whatever the error calculation. It depends upon the algorithm. It calculates the error rate, and that error rate is fed to the neural networks in order to correct its weights. So it keeps on repeating the number of repetition, we call it as the epochs. So you can decide the number of epochs, and this error signal is propagated in order to correct the neural networks by itself. So depending upon the error signal, the neural network or the hidden layer will correct itself in order to have a correct way to predict the correct answers. So this is why you need not have some linear functions. So for example, if you have some linear functions, this is an example for boundary decision boundary values. Suppose if I have some what is a linear, if I draw a line anywhere, it is not going to separate this decision boundary between the yellow and the blue color. So for that, you have to go with the non-linear one. So this says that why this deep learning is important. So deep learning algorithm is easy to adapt, and it can learn the algorithms very fast, and it gives a very flexible value. It can able to learn on itself from the input data. So this deep learning can be used in any algorithms where this learning can happen on its own. For example, deep learning applications, you know that it involves the self-driving cars, chatbots, and language translators. Everything come from this deep learning algorithm. So actually this deep learning has started around in 2004, but after 2015 it has a huge interest in that deep learning, and then machine learning came down after the pickup of this deep learning algorithm. So this is an example how this deep learning has been used in this World Cup for how much it has been used in the past to the present years. And one more thing, improvement has happened in the image processing and in the natural language processing. So these two areas are much important for the deep learning, because this machine learning algorithms could not perform well with this machine learning algorithms, both the NLP and the image processing. So this is an example how this training of that data works. So you will have sample batch of data. You can separate your huge data into number of batches, and then you can forward it to the predictions. And in the prediction, you will get some errors. Depending upon the errors, you can adjust your weights, and then you can try with the next batch of the data. So the how many times you're trying, we call it as the epoch functions. This generate error signals depends upon the algorithm what you are using. It can be anything. It depends upon the programmer or the algorithm writer. So the number of epochs, the number of training that has to happen. Suppose if you have minimum number of training or minimum number of epochs, then you will have an inadequate activation function, so that you cannot able to separate it. Suppose if you have a good compromise, then you will have a correct activation function, so that you can correctly identify in a minimum number of time. Suppose if you train your data more also, then it will also give some other problem. We call it as a overfitting problem. In that overfitting also, your data, your result won't be good. Even if it is good, it will take more time. So that's all about this introduction about this deep learning algorithms. Next, I will introduce this Google Colab with NumPy. So first, I'll quickly go through what is NumPy and what is its advantage, and then I'll go with this hands-on session for this NumPy, and then I'll introduce with this TensorFlow. So for this, in order to implement your deep learning algorithm, you can use TensorFlow, PyTorch, or some other libraries. So the most, or Keras, whatever you want, you can use it. But most of them algorithms uses this NumPy and the Pandas as the basic data handling methods for both this Keras as well as your PyTorch and also the TensorFlow. So all the data handling methods are going to use this NumPy library. So you can use any of your libraries for writing your deep learning algorithms. Mostly we use this TensorFlow.
Hello, ma'am.
Yes.
Ma'am, for a given problem, either we can apply machine learning or deep learning to solve that algorithms.
Yes, ma'am.
Anything we can apply, right?
Anything? Yes, ma'am. You can apply anything. Machine learning or deep learning algorithms.
Means how to choose that, ma'am? Like which would be better? Like that, how to choose?
Ma'am, as of now, for image processing and NLP, this machine learning algorithm is not working proper. Suppose if you know exactly the features, suppose you can able to justify the features, you can go with the machine learning algorithm. Suppose if you don't know the features, feature extraction, then we can go with the deep learning algorithms. It depends upon that.
Okay.
And the data. But deep learning algorithms will not work with less number of data. If you have only a huge amount of data, then only we can go with this deep learning algorithms.
Means what is the limitation, ma'am? Huge amount means how much at least it should be?
It depends, ma'am. Actually, suppose if you are using an image processing or image identification or image reduction algorithm means, if your training data is very good such that, for example, if I want to detect the object, a vehicle movement means if I get around 1,000 or 10,000 images which with similar to that vehicle detection, it will do the vehicle detection correctly. Suppose if I'm supplying a training data which is of different kinds, then it will not work. It will work, but it will not give the desired output.
Okay, okay, ma'am. Okay, thank you, ma'am.
So this is the basic data handling library in Python. So this data handle NumPy is used in both in your TensorFlow as well as in your Keras. So you need to know about the basics. Just I'll introduce what is NumPy. So NumPy is the one which basically deals with the array. So actually, when you write a program in a Python or in a Java, you will have multiple iteration in order to read a data, to do some manipulations. But with this introducing with this NumPy library, you can able to do your operation very easily with your array functions. So this is a small list. So distance is a list which is given in the Python. So distance is given in elements of 4 elements and time is with the 4 elements. Suppose if you try to divide this distance by time, since it is an array, it is going to throw an error. So instead of that, if you introduce NumPy, so if you introduce a NumPy array, so I have created a thing called as a distance, which is nothing but an NumPy array, and a distance, another thing called as time, which is a NumPy array. If you divide distance by time, it is going to give the answer without having any for loop, without having any iteration and all. So this is the why we have to use this NumPy. It is very useful for doing the operation in the multi-dimensional arrays, and it can able to do all your operations. For example, your trigonometric operations, Fourier transform operation, normal multiplication, arithmetic operations on the array by using this NumPy library. And this is an easy way of storing. And one more thing is that you can able to send and receive the data by using this NumPy library between the modules, and it can able to integrate with the other languages also. So with this multi-dimensional array, what you can do means you can add, remove, or change the values in your multidimensional array. It can support all your mathematical functions. It can be multidimensional. The problem with this NP array is that it is going to be homogeneous because it is going to be an array data type. So whenever you use a NumPy, it is going to handle only the homogeneous data type. So this is the one thing we have to remember. It does not work on the heterogeneous data types. So this is why you have to have the multidimensional array. So all your algorithm is going to handle, or your deep learning and your machine learning algorithm is going to handle a huge amount of data. So when you want to transfer your data from one module to the another module, you can use this multidimensional array very easily to pass your information from one place to the another. So this is an example. So first thing, suppose if you want to use any library, you have to import it. So in order to import your NumPy, we can use this command, import NumPy as NP. This is NP is a variable, but this is a normal standard conversion as an NP. So we can use it as import NumPy as NP. And you can create an array by using this NP dot this array method with this array. And it comes with predefined initialization. If you want to define your array 3x3 matrix with zeros, just give np.zeros 3,3. Automatically, it is going to get initialized with all the zeros. And if you want to initialize with ones, you can initialize with this ones. And if you want to initialize your library with this empty values, you can initialize. Suppose if you initialize with an empty, it is going to give you the garbage values. And this is range function. Np dot range means what it will do means it will fill the array with the range of numbers from till 12. So it is going to fill the elements it is going to fill 12 elements starting from 0 to 11. So when you try to print that range means it is going to display all the things. And suppose if you want to convert one dimensional array to another dimension, then you can use this reshape or resize function. Reshape and resize does the same thing. The difference is that I think resize is going to create another new array, new object, and it will resize. Reshape, it is going to use the same NP same array that will be converted to another form. So actually we have to be clear when you are mentioning the number of elements. Since here in this array there is NP array contains 12. If we are arranging in a 3x4 matrix, we cannot arrange this in a 3x5 matrix since we have 12 elements alone. And this is a linear space. Suppose I want to have 5 elements starting from 1 to 6, then you can use this linear space. So it will have the elements from 1 to 6, and all the 6 elements will be linearly arranged. So this is a linear arrangement. And suppose if you want to convert this one-dimensional array into a two-dimensional array, you can reshape it by using 3, 5. So automatically it will have 3 rows and 5 columns. Since it has 5 elements, your two-dimensional array will contain that one. So you can have any number of dimensions. For our understanding, we always use this up to 3 dimensions. So this is one-dimensional array. This is this two-dimensional array, and this can be multi-dimensional array. And we call it as this rank. The rank is nothing but the number of lists you have inside your array. For this, I have 2 lists. So first list is 0, 1, 2, and next list is 5, 6, 7. So this 2 list. So automatically this rank is going to be 2. Here we have 3 lists inside it, so it is 3. So this is an order what you have to do. Actually, the thing is that suppose if you are using this NP array, you have to import it before doing that. So this is that a small quiz question. So your right answer is going to be 1, 3, 2, and 4. Can you give the answer for this question in chat box? How many elements will be there in this linear space? 4, 13, 7. So it is going to have 7 elements. And you can do all your basic operations with this NumPy. And you can have the scalar multiplication with this NumPy just using this multiplication. So all your element is going to get multiplied with this 15, and it is going to store in this new array called as daily wage. And you can sum up all the array elements by just using this sum function. And you can have this comparison functions also. For example, if weekly hours is not equal to 40, it is going to display only the elements which is not equal to 40. Suppose if you say weekly array is greater than 40, here you have greater than 40 is 41, 55, and 47. That is only going to get displayed. And how you can access your array elements in NumPy, it uses just like Java. So here it is a two-dimensional array. So first, a two-dimensional array. This is going to be the 0th row, and this is going to be the first row. That 0th row can be directly initialized to another array element. You need not have any iterative loops. Suppose if you give it as 0, automatically the first set of data is going to be allotted for the first trial. And the second set of data is going to be allotted for the second trial. So this first trial will contain 10, 15, 17, and 26. The second trial will contain 12, 11, 21, and 24. And suppose if you want to access the single element, then you can access the single element just like in your Java. So it is 0, 0 is going to access your first element. And suppose I want to access all the 0th column, but I want all the rows, means I can use just a colon. So this colon will have will defaultly will have all the rows. So in this place it is going to have everything, and for this column value it is going to have only the 0. So automatically it is going to give 10 and 12. And if you want to take a part of an array, you can use this colon operator. So if you give the shape, it is going to print the dimension. So it is going to 2 cross 4, it is printing 2 cross 4. And this is a slicing. For your row, it is taking all your rows. And for columns, it starts with 1 and ends before 3. So it is going to give 1 and 2. So for all the rows, it is going to give column 1 and 2 alone. This 3 will not be included. It will start with 1 and it will end before this 3. Just in your Python.
What are the topics we discussed in the last class? Okay.
And for iteration, uh, it is a Python, so it uses the iteration as in the Python. So you need not initialize this for iterate cyclist
Excuse me,
trials. Yes.
Ma'am, one participant asked some question. Sir, Venkateshwara sir,
What are the points?
sir, are you having any question? Ma'am, no problem, ma'am. We can continue, ma'am.
Okay, I could not go to that chat box. So you need not have initialize any variable. Suppose if you give this for a variable name in your array, so automatically it is going this variable name will take all your elements in your array for from 0 to 0, 0 0 to n. Suppose for the first one, first time it is going to take the 15, second time it is going to take the 17. In the same way, it is going to iterate repeatedly without any initialization, incremental, and a condition checking. So it is going to iterate from the 0th element to the last element. And what are the functions that can be done on this NumPy array? Actually, it supports most of the functions which are necessary. It supports all the trigonometric functions and all the mathematical functions, along with that comparison and logical functions. Suppose if you want trigonometric functions, then you have to import this Py library. From NumPy, import Py. With this Py library, you can use this function. You can use all your trigonometric functions. So whenever data is used, it has to go with the shape manipulations, and you have to reform your shapes and all. For this, it supports this reshaping functions and the resizing functions. So these are the functions which are supported in order to change the shape of your n-dimensional array. It can flatten, it can split, resize, and it can once again combine into a single flattened, can be once again changed into a multidimensional also. So the first function is nothing but your ravel function. Ravel function is nothing but which will convert into one-dimensional array. Suppose if you have multi-dimensional array, if you give it as in ravel, automatically it will be converted in a one-dimensional. So this one-dimensional array can be once again converted into any form or any shape. Suppose if you give this reshape, if you give the reshape 3,4, it is going to convert into a 3x4 dimension. But thing is that your elements has to match. If your element is not matching, it is going to throw the error. Suppose if you don't know how many columns will come, you can give the colon. Automatically, it will resize into 3 rows, corresponding number of columns. And reshape, and this is resize again. Both will do the same operation. This resize will create one new more object, but this reshape will change the existing object itself. And this horizontal split, what it'll do means it will split the arrays. For example, this already it is 2D array. Suppose I want to make it split, means once again it will cut into 2. So automatically this 2 cross 6 matrix will be converted into 3 cross 4 matrix, or it will divide this array into 2 arrays. And if you want to merge the 2 arrays, once again you can use this H stack. And for multiplications, NumPy does not follows this matrix multiplications. Instead of that, what it does means it does this element-wise multiplication. So with the element-wise multiplication, it multiplies with every element. So it does not have any matrix multiplication. For example, I am multiplying this array with this array. The first element is going to multiply it in the same way. Both the second elements is going to get multiplied. It is not going to be a matrix multiplication. And if it is a scalar, it does this broadcasting. So one element will be broadcast to the other. But either you can have equal number of elements in both array for the multiplication, or you can multiply with a single element to the all the elements. You cannot have two elements so that it could be multiplied with the first two elements, another element which could be multiplied with the second elements. Either it can be a element wise multiplication or a single scalar value multiplied to the all the values. This is the normal operations. Even if it is an array, your NumPy allows you to do the addition, subtraction, just like a normal variable in the multidimensional arrays. And for transpose, you can transpose into a rows and columns. You can transpose your arrays into a rows into columns by just using a transpose. This is an example. I'll run through the example later. So for this question, I already said that your NumPy is an array. So it is going to have only the homogeneous data. So the right answer is only the D1, because this Python supports this complex data types. For this first one, it is a combination of integers and float. So this answer is wrong. Here also you have a string as well as this numeric. So this is also wrong. And this is a Boolean data type and this is a string data type. So this is also wrong. So this complex operations, this complex data type is supported in this NumPy. So it is right. So to convert a multidimensional array to a single dimensional array, you can use this Ravel operation. And if you apply a transpose in a single dimensional array, it is not going to change anything. So your answer is an unchanged original array for your transpose. So we came to a conclusion for this NumPy Python library. So NumPy is just for working with your arrays. All your operation can be easily done by using this NumPy array. Suppose if you are using any kind of libraries, first if you are handling with the numerical data, first import your NumPy library. You can do all your multidimensional operations very easily by using this NumPy library without having much number of codings. You can and also it is optimized code, so you need not worry about the running time or your usage of your processor. So all your operation in your NumPy are optimized, and it will give the better performance when you use this one multidimensional array by using this NumPy. I don't know whether I can go with the hands-on session. So I'll send in a small assignment. I think I can attach here somewhere. I think I cannot share any document over here. So first thing is that I have to import the library. Import. I'll run it. Actually, you need not install anything for working with your TensorFlow or any deep learning algorithms. You need not have a GPU installed. Instead of that, you can use this Google Colab. I think you might have already have had a hands-on session. So just search Google Colab. Go into the Google Colab. And you can have this file, new notebook. Automatically, it will open a new Jupyter notebook for you where you can work on all your Python libraries, including your TensorFlow, NumPy, SciPy, everything you can work on it. So you can add number of codes to that and you can add the text as well. For example, if I want to import this NumPy library, I can say it as import NumPy as NP. But before going into the next level of coding, run it. So there is no worry about installing or doing something. If you want to run the next code, you can just give the code and make sure that your code is run before running this code. Suppose if the second code is using your first code, make sure that you have already run your first code before doing this. Or in your runtime, after doing all the codes, you can run all at a same time. Restart and run all. It will run all the entire codes at a given time. And you can see the amount of space or amount of RAM which is allotted. So the assignment is to find, actually in this assignment, what the question is that it has given this GDP and the country names. So we need to find out the country with the maximum GDP and we need to find the country with the lowest GDP. I'll add some set of countries manually. So I want to find out the country. Here this argument max is a function of this numpy, which is going to give the index, highest index in that array, or index of the array which contains the highest value. Let us max GDP is equal to declare it as an So 45 is the maximum GDP. Sorry, 45 is the index position of the maximum GDP. If I want the country, so this is how your NumPy works. It's very simple. So what it does means, actually I have created an NumPy array. Initially I missed it. So I have created as a normal array. Suppose if you want to create a NumPy array, it is just np.array followed by your values. And then this for argument max is nothing but is going to find out the index position of the array which contains the maximum value. So 45 is the position where it contains the maximum value. So in the 45 position, that is the country with the maximum GDP. So when you printed that with the index position, it is going to print that country. The same thing goes for the lowest GDP also. The only thing is that instead of argument max, we have to use this argument minimum. And for this for loop, you need not use this complete iteration. So for, we can declare one variable. I'm declaring it as country in countries. So it is going to print all the countries. I need not have anything. Suppose if you want to add text, you can add your text by using the single quotation. So this is going to be the placeholder where it is going to replace it. So instead of %d, whatever you use in the C, we use this close parenthesis in order to substitute that values. And you, for iterating variable, you can have any iterating variable. So this is your iterating variable, which you need not initialize, which you need not increment, everything. So this is so simple when compared to the all the other things. So whenever you have multidimensional array, you can go with this NumPy without writing the much methods. What it is near, you can just use the method directly without writing the complete methods. And the problem with this NumPy is that it deals only with the arrays. Suppose if you want to handle the list, dictionaries and everything, then we can go for this pandas. So why we have to use this panda means pandas uses an great indexing methods, so it has a good alignment and it supports the multiple operations, and it has methods to handle the data, and it contains many data structures. So it uses all kinds of data structures, not limited to the array. So we can go for this pandas. So panda will be very helpful when we go with this different data structures. So this can be used in financial applications, analysis, and engineering applications. And wherever you have the multiple data structures can be handled, you can go with this pandas. So what are the advantages? It is a powerful data structure. You can have multiple data structures, and you can easily, just like NumPy, you can transform your data easily from one methods to another methods. It has fast and efficient shaping and the wrangling facilities, and it is optimized. And along with that, you can have all your transformation and aggregation operations. So in pandas, we have all the 4 data structures, single dimensional data structures. We call it as series, but in the series, it is not limited to a single data type. It supports all the multiple data types. And this is the data frame. This data frame is the one thing which is mostly used with the pandas. So it has this 2-dimensional arrays. So it could be a series or it could be a data frame. It handles the 2-dimensional data. We call it as this data frames, and it can handle the 3-dimensional databases, which we call it as this panels. But this panel 4D is just experimental, which is not most used. So with this series, what it does means your data alignment or indexing is automatically happen within this series. So in the series, it supports all the Python objects, all the Python variables, or can be used with this pandas. Along with that, it uses their multi-dimensional array, dictionary, scalar, and the lists, and your output, that is your how it has been stored means along with the index. It automatically creates an index for your data types. So when you work on this pandas along with the NumPy library, you have to import your pandas. So this is your syntax. There we used as np.array. Here we used as pd.series. Suppose if you use a series, we will use the series. Suppose if you are using another things 2-dimensional or 3-dimensional, just like your data frames, we can use this data frames here. And with the NumPy, your array is smaller, but with the TensorFlow as well as the pandas, it is going to start with a capital letter. So pd dot the series is going to S is going to be the capital letter. The same format will be also followed in the TensorFlow as well. So this is the first import, and we have created a series with A, B, C, D, E, F. So when you print it, suppose if you are using your NumPy library, it does not have any indexings, but it automatically generates an index for your series. So we have not created an index, but it is done automatically. It is aligned automatically with this pandas. So this is another example. So this is first we have created an array, and that array is passed to the series. And this does not limits your indexing to be a numeric character. So you can have your indexing as a string variable also. So when you create a series, along with the series, you can use this index colon equal to with some strings, so that this could be used as your indexing. So you need not limit your indexing to the numeric character, what it is normally done in the other programming languages. So here your indexing is going to be the strings. And for this 5, we have created the index. So since we have created a 5 index, it is going to have the 5 objects, and each index is going to map to the corresponding object. So you can access your elements just like in your Python by using a 0 means it is going to access your first element. 0 to 5, it will access from 0 to 4, and you can use your index in order to access the element. So this is nothing but the index which is created in the name of a string. Suppose if you are accessing your series by using this .loc location using the index, it is going to give that corresponding value. and you can perform all your operations by using your index positions. So whenever you add, the corresponding index position is going to get add, just not what to say, not like your numpy, it is going to add 1 to 1. Instead of that, the corresponding element is going to match. This AA index is going to get matched, and A is going to get added, and BB is going to get added. Suppose if you change the order of the index, automatically, depending upon that character or depending upon the index, it is going to add it. For example, here B is 30. So 30 will be added with this 2, which is going to give you 32. And the main important thing of this pandas is that it can able to handle this null values. Okay, so that is the main importance of this pandas. Suppose if some values are missing, for that in the earlier index we had from A, B, C, D. Here it is A, B, only A and B is matching. The remaining thing index or not matching, automatically it is going to fill with the null values. So in the vector addition, if label is not found, what it will go means it is going to mark it as a missing labels. And next one is the data frame. Data frame is two-dimensional data structures, which is the mostly used data type in the pandas. So pandas is used mainly to handle the data frames. So it supports all your objects, all your Python object. Along with that, your input can be a dictionary, list, series, as well as the data frame. But for NumPy library, it is going to use only the array. And this is also going to be get indexed. So this is an example of this data frame. So with this data frame, we have three lists or three columns. So one is going to be the host city, year, and the number of participating countries. So you can have this titles with this data frame. So this is how it is created with the dictionaries. So that's all about the introduction about this pandas. And I'll give the basic of this TensorFlow. I'm not going to go deep into that TensorFlow basics. So what this TensorFlow means? TensorFlow is nothing but which can handle the high-dimensional data structures, such as actually all your tensors are nothing but the nodes. So all the nodes are given in a graphs. So you will have this graphs. Graphs is or nothing but which can hold the nodes or which can have the data, and it can be interconnected. And if you want to run the data in the graph, you need to have the sessions. You can run a part of a graph by using the sessions. So you can able to run a graph by creating a session and running nodes inside the sessions. So this is how the TensorFlow works. So tensor contains two parts. One is the tensor, another one is the flow. So tensor is nothing but the nodes which are present in that graph. So it represents the data which is present inside the graph and how it is connected, and how the programming flow happened is given by the flow. So TensorFlow, your basic operation in your TensorFlow is going to be similar to your NumPy. So you can have a scalar quantity or a vector quantity, or you can have your multidimensional matrix also. You can do all your operations within the all kind of data. You can create, you can add, edit, and you can manipulate your data. Suppose if you have one-dimensional array, we call it as 0D, and if it is that is just a string or just some integer values. If it is in one-dimensional array, we call it as a vector. More than one-dimensional, it is a matrix or a second-order tensor. So whenever you are running your TensorFlow in Google Colab, you are advised to do. You advised to set your version to 2.x. Why this is necessary means, in your Google Colab, there is 2 versions, which is 1 as well as 2. Some functions may not work with the version 1. So first thing is that you have to set your version in your Google Colab with this version 2.x, and you can make sure that 2 is used by printing this version. So these are the basic steps when you have to use your TensorFlow in your Google Colab. The first step is going to be percentage TensorFlow version 2.x in order to make sure that you are working on the version 2, and import your TensorFlow version and then check it by using your version. And it supports many data types, but these are the normally used data types. It can have int 32, int 64, int 8, as well as in the float, string, and other data types. And shapes is nothing but the dimension of the data. For example, you can have 3-dimension means for example, if you have a matrix means it is 2-dimensional. If it is a 2x4 matrix, its shape is going to be 2. And if it is a 3-dimensional, its shape is going to be 3. So shape represents the dimension of the data. And this is how we declare the variables. So when you declare a variable, we have imported TensorFlow as a TF. So it is TF dot variable name. Your variable V is going to be the capital letter, followed by the initialization value, followed by the data type. Suppose if I have initialized 324 with integer 16, and for the second time, if I leave it, it will automatically take the default value for that. So you can specify by using this data type as well. So as I already said, your rank is nothing but the dimension of your tensor, which can be rank 0 or rank 1 or a rank 2. So this is your rank 1 tensor, which contain 1 list. This is a rank 2 tensor, which contain 2 lists. If you print the rank, it will print that 1, 2, or depending upon the dimension of the database. So the shape is same as in the NumPy. It is going to give the number of rows per number of columns, or number of elements, or the number of the sizes, exact size of a matrix, or exact size of the tensor. So this is same as in the NumPy. TF dot ones means it is going to create full of ones. It creates a shape of 1, 2, 3. It is a 3-dimensional with 1, 2, 3. And if you want to reshape, you can reshape by using this method. You have to be clear with the dimensions, or else it is going to throw the error. Suppose if you don't know the dimension, for example, if you want 3 rows and you don't know the columns, if you give the -1, automatically it will fill the values in that position. So slicing is same as accessing the limited number of rows and columns in the tensors. So instead of accessing the whole tensor, you can able to access a specific rows or specific column with the tensors by using this slicing methods. The slicing methods also similar to the NumPy libraries. So suppose if I use 1:3, 0, it is going to take the row 1 and row 2 for all the column zeros. So this is your TensorFlow basics. So actually TensorFlow contains 2 parts. One is nothing but you're building the graph, and the next one is there running your graph. So building your graph is nothing but building all your nodes or building all your tensors, allotting all your tensors to that graph, and making the association or making the way it has to execute. So building a graph will not run a graph. So in order to run a graph, you have to explicitly run the graph by using the sessions. So earlier we have seen about the variables. You can also create a constant. This is a variable constant name, TF dot constant, your constant value, followed by your data type. If you don't give the data type, it will also take it as a float 32. After building your graph, you have to run that graph by using this session. So in order to create a session, you have to give TF dot session. It will create a new session, and then you can run your session. After running your session, you can close your session in order to free up your spaces. So this is how you can create a graph. We have created a graph with two nodes A and B, and we have created a one variable called as a C, which multiplies this A and B and produces the result. So just doing these things will not run the values. In order to run that, you need to create a session and you have to run that session. And if you want to visualize this graph, if you want to see the graph, then you have to use this tensor board. So you have to use this tensor board. When you create a tensor board, and if you give a session.graph, what it will do means it will create a one file called as a graph, and this graph would be written in that corresponding file. You can open and see the file, how your graph has been created for your tensors. So this could be useful when you are creating the number of nodes, and in your deep learning methods, if you are creating in the number of nodes, how your graph is working, how many layers you have, all this can be made visible by writing your graph to a file, and you can this file can be viewed. This graph will be created as a separate file in your Google Colab. And one more thing, we know that in the deep learning, everything is going to be have the nodes, and the node is going to get the values from the previous nodes, or your your perceptrons is going to get the values from the previous perceptron. It may get or it may not get. So instead of declaring it as a variable and instead of initializing to a value, you can have something called as a placeholder in a TensorFlow. So what this placeholder means, it defines a value of A, but it says that you are going to get this value in the future. Now you will not have the value. You are going to get the value, or you are going to give the value in a future. Then you can have this placeholder. So this is an additional option which is available in the TensorFlow in order to receive the data from the previous nodes. So that's all about this session. So your basic algorithms, or all your algorithms, classification and clustering algorithms, are already implemented in your TensorFlow. You can directly use that functions which are available with this TensorFlow.
Hello, ma'am.
Yes.
Hello, ma'am. Can you tell about two-dimensional data frame, which was not clear, ma'am? Means
Ma'am, you want to
data
create
frame.
it?
Data frame, ma'am. The PPT.
Yes, ma'am. I'm opening it. Ma'am, in the data frame, it is going to handle the data just like the NumPy. Every operation you can do whatever you can do with the NumPy. The thing is that you can have multiple types. For example, if it is a NumPy, it is going to support only the arrays.
Yeah,
But with the-
Here, ma'am. In a host city, you gave London, Beijing, etc. like that. Then how
yes,
it
ma'am.
is declared, ma'am? Host city comes inside a single quotes. After that, the data comes inside the square bracket, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you explain that, ma'am?
Ma'am, you can have this. For example, you can have what to say in SQL. You can have the column names or the column header. In the same way, we can create the name for the column header by using this by giving a name to that corresponding column in order to
Then,
access.
then I want to put colon, and after that
Yes,
square
ma'am.
bracket.
Square
Square
bracket
bracket.
says that it is a list which contains the data.
Okay. That whole array should be surrounded in a curly bracket, right?
Yes, ma'am. The whole thing has to be surrounded in a curly bracket. Whenever we mention a data, it has to come inside a square bracket, which means that it is a data with a or it is a list.
Okay. Only in a single quotes, it's become the colon header.
Yes, ma'am. This colon is mandatory and it has to be in a single quote.
Okay. Okay. Then we can. Then how this box comes, ma'am? Which is the
No, no,
box.
ma'am. The box, I have created the box. It is not that orange color box is not there.
Not, ma'am. In out to four, you all arrays are comes in a box, right? It already comes, or we have to evaluate like a table format or like that.
No, ma'am. It will come in that format. It will display in that format.
Okay.
If you print that, if you print that that data frame, it will print it.
Okay.
You
Which
need
is
not do anything with that.
okay. Okay. In HTML, we given some table format or like that.
No, not necessary. Nothing necessary, ma'am. Sometimes what it will do means if you give the variable name itself, it will get printed. But with the Google Colab, sometimes it will not get printed. So if you give print, within the print, if you give that data frame name, it will print in that table format. It will
Okay.
automatically align into a table format.
Data frame only supported in pandas only, not in NumPy.
No, ma'am. In NumPy, data frames are not supported.
Okay,
Data
ma'am.
that's why we have to go for the pandas for data frames.
Which one more beneficial, ma'am? Panda or NumPy?
Ma'am, suppose if you are using an array only, if you are using only the multidimensional array, we can go for the NumPy. That is the best. Suppose if you are using a list or a dictionaries or some other kind of heterogeneous data type, then we can go for the pandas.
Okay, ma'am. Okay, thank you,
If
ma'am.
it is
Thank you.
just an homogeneous or just an array, we can go with the NumPy.
Okay. Okay, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you.
Participants, if you have any other queries, kindly ask now. Or you can post it through chat box. Ma'am, we have one query, ma'am. Explain about ImSpace function.
1 minute, ma'am. ImSpace function?
Yes, ma'am.
I don't know about ImSpace function.
They send it like that.
I don't know. Really, I don't know. I'm not aware of that ImSpace function.
Devi, ma'am.
Hello, ma'am.
Yes.
Ma'am, could you explain the first objective type related to NumPy? There was 4, 13, 17, answer was 7. Could you clarify that?
Linearly spaced. Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
linear list.
Actually, if it is a linear space, you will have three input values. If I say 3 comma 5 comma 7, suppose if this is your input means it will start with 3 and it will end with 5 and it should contain 7 elements. So 3 to 5 it will split into 7 and it will automatically initialize with that values. Something 3, 3.2, 3.6, something like that, it will initialize.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Ma'am, we have another query. What is the difference between Keras and TensorFlow?
It depends on the libraries what you are using. Actually, both are used for deep learning. And this TensorFlow, what it does means actually it uses this nodes. And this Keras is about high level APIs, and this TensorFlow is more about what to say, user friendly, where you can have multiple nodes and you can run a part of your nodes as a sessions. And this Keras run over this TensorFlow. It is an advanced version over this TensorFlow. Just how we are using NumPy as a basic for this TensorFlow, this Keras will be using this TensorFlow as a part of it.
Participants, do you have any other queries?
Ma'am, which one is better to select, ma'am, like for text mining, Keras or TensorFlow, ma'am? Language modeling.
Ma'am, you can use TensorFlow. Suppose if you want some powerful API to use it, then you can go for this Keras. But normal functions you can use with this TensorFlow itself.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, ma'am. I think the queries are over. Thank you, Kavita ma'am. Thank you for your mind-blowing session. We feel very happy to have you as a resource person for this FTP.
Thank you, Pa.
Thank you, ma'am.
Take care. Bye.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, participants. We can meet at 11:30 a.m. with the same link.